Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our fourth and last 2021 Poetry Month open mic. We have a very special guest with us today. I'm going to introduce him in just a moment. But I do want to thank our what I've decided to call our resident DPS senior poet, Miss Shanice Jackman. She has joined us or shared with us a poem or two every week. And she has really been a force in these open mics. And she's here with us again today. I also want to introduce my partner in all things literacy and poetry, Dr. Sharon Griffith. And then I would like to introduce our special guest, Kane Smego. Kane is a Durham native and well-respected name and member of the spoken word community. He's also a hip hop artist, and he does some really great, amazing international education work, but he knows his work better than I do. So I would like to introduce Kane Smego.
Thank you so much, Ms. Perez. I appreciate it. Thank y'all for having me. It's nice to be able to reconnect with DPS and some youth poets in Durham after being out living in Los Angeles for the last 6.5 years, which sounds crazy to say. It seems like it was just yesterday that I was doing workshops and programs and performances in North Carolina. So I still come back often. It's still my home. So it's cool to be able to just like zoom in and at least connect with you all like this. So if you're out there listening, much love. Thanks for taking the time to come check us out. As Ms. Perez said, I'm a hip hop artist and a poet. I'm going to share some of my work today. We have some DPS students that are going to be sharing what they got today. Like we said, our resident poet. So I'm going to let Heidi in a second give you some background and give her a proper introduction. But first, I want to make sure that y'all are ready. Y'all are primed. You know how to be a good audience. Even though we can't see you, it's very strange for those of us who are used to being on the road and touring and being on stages and having audiences give us energy. It's weird to like be in my house and in front of a laptop screen. So we're just going to believe that you're out there, trust that you're sending energy. If you hear something that you like, it's customary to snap, right? In the poetry community. You can also make noise and holler or whatever. And any energy that we feel coming from you, we're just going to reciprocate it 10 times. If you see somebody that is getting emotional or stumbling in a part, maybe they're giving you like a really vulnerable piece of their life story through their poetry. Sometimes we do this right here. We rub our hands together because this is friction. Friction is heat. Heat is energy. So it's our way that we send energy to the performer that's on the stage. So if you hear a line that resonates with you, that connects with you, if you hear a bar that you like, because I'll probably spit some bars later too for those hip hop heads out there. Again, you can snap, you can make noise, and we'll just know that you're like wilding out in your own living room along with us. So without further ado, we're gonna get this thing started. I'm going to open up. I guess I should break the ice and kick a little poem. You know, when I was a student, I went to school in Durham until I was 11 years old. And I popped over and did middle school in Chapel Hill. And then I moved out of state. And then I moved back to Durham. And like I said, now I live in LA. So I've been kind of popping around. But when I was young, when I was your age, and I was a student in Durham, I was into hip hop, you know, and I didn't know that poetry and hip hop that hip hop was a type of poetry. So when I heard poetry, I thought roses are red, violets are blue, and I love you. And that's all I thought poetry was. And it was many years later that I had a high school teacher that really influenced me and introduced me to this idea of poetry as storytelling and as a way to tell your story. We have a saying in the poetry and hip hop community: if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And when people tell our stories for us, they tend to get it wrong. And we also know that this is nothing new, right? People like to talk about hip hop like it's this new thing these hippity hoppity young kids are doing, but this is ancient, right? This idea of telling stories through rhythm and verse. From the griots and the jellies who were traveling storytellers in West Africa, to the Moorish troubadours of North Africa, to the bards of ancient Greece that wrote the Odyssey that you have to read in school. That was actually originally a spoken word piece. It was performed. So all that to say, this is nothing new. This is what we do as human beings, the way we understand the world around us. So thinking about that, I think it's only fitting that we start out with what's called a praise poem. one of the oldest forms of poetry around the world, a poem that celebrates someone or something. And this is a poem that I wrote over 15 years ago. So it kind of takes me back. But yeah, it always reminds me where I come from and who I come from. So I got $1 in my wallet and a pocket full of change. Palms burning out, trying to hold on to a dream. Got a fist full of lightning and a heart full of soul. Banging on my chest, you know the thunder gonna roll. I got nowhere to be, but I got somewhere to go. Follow, follow, follow her. I swear allegiance to my X chromosome, the one my mother gave me, the one that pushed mops for 17 years so we could eat. I swear allegiance to my X chromosome because mama was my guardian, papa was a rolling stone. Now, papa was a doctor, precisely penning patient prescription dosages down to the milligram, but always seemed to come up short on our monthly child support checks. And so my mother, our mothers try to write inspirational songs of life to deadbeats, so that children have no support. But I cling to the hope that it's gonna get better, though feeling under the weather. I wonder whether wonderful pleasure will ever come her direction. Must my mother struggle forever? There's no light. She's stuck in the cellar. It seems like in this life, everyone is against her. Depression is present because the pressure is stressing. Every day is a setup. Another vendetta, a letter from my father meant to ruffle her feathers, attempt to plunder and shred up her credit like federal debts, but she won't let up or respond to those letters. And so I have sworn allegiance to my X chromosome. You see, at the time of my coming into this world, my mother went through labor twice. My mother's eyes, my mother's pupils dilated 10 centimeters, her gaze giving birth to a love for me that will never die. And though I carry the color of Mars in my blood, it is Venus that remains closer to the sun. Closer to her son, but now Venus is on the run in a world where 99% of all the murder, rape, violence, and war has been caused by us men. And we still say it's a man's world, like that's been working for us. When male plus violence has equal malevolence, we say it's a man's world. Split the binary, say we're all human, the opposite sex of females or women who have menstrual cycles until menopause. I want my men to pause. Think twice. Next time you see something you like and feel the need to be like, baby, you looking nice. I could call you wife, just say word and I say word and it'll be off to the races. Think twice and imagine your mother's face on her shoulders. Because every woman is somebody's daughter. What do we want for our daughters? Most women be somebody's mother, grandmother. I stand, hover over history and wonder how we pray to our father, but sin against our mother earth, mother nature, motherland. I want to rubber band my arms so tight, isolate the vein to bring the needle so close that I can probe the bone, extract the testosterone and fill up on estrogen till it's overflowing so I can strengthen my feminine side. And we hear the word feminist, right? And we think of new age, as if feminism were a novelty, but feminism was conceived on the eve that Eve split from oppressive Adam, Eve split from Adam, Eve split in Adam. And the energy release was empowerment. A new vision through nuclear fission, and the nuclear family saw its first revision, changed our trajectory, altered our arc, the arc that Joan built, the matriarch, the archangel, the leader. Forget Bonaparte, it was Joan of Arc. You see, from the start, women looked to the stars, stargazing, sojourning for truth, and it was found, sometimes written in the dirt with callous fingers, sometimes parked in a bus seat where Rosa proved that even by sitting down, women could take a stand, sometimes through suffering or suffrage. And I like to think that true women MCs, artists, musicians, poets, like Miss Jackman coming up next, they believe in Harriet Tubman. They keep their tracks underground, making their music and poetry to bring their people to the promised land. And I find truth, I find power in my mama's hands, pushing a broom for 17 years. And though I'm grown and consider myself a man on my own, I raise my hands and swear allegiance to my X chromosome. Thank y'all so much. A little praise poem to start us off. I'm gonna pass it over to Miss Perez to give a proper introduction to Miss Shanice Jackman, and we're gonna kick this thing off and keep it moving.
Thank you, Kane, and you did that on purpose. I know you did. I've been following Kane's work for over a decade, and he knows that poem gets me. He's trying to get me to cry live, but I'm good. I'm in a good place today. But thank you for sharing for all women and mothers. That definitely was praise. Definitely was praise. And Kane is right. We are going to move on to Shanice Jackman. She is a senior at Jordan High School, and she has two pieces she's going to share with us. The first one is rhythm, and so I'm going to turn over the mic to our DPS open mic resident poet, Ms. Denise Jackman.
Thank you. Rhythm. Wake up, brush teeth, get dressed, go to school. These are the steps to keep us in stability, the steps that allow us to have mobility and flexibility in a society that arrests what gives it anxiety. These are the steps that become normality and familiarity, the type of steps that make you feel like you're on a hamster wheel, make you feel like there's no time to deal with issues that are supposed to let us heal. These are the steps of life. No breaks, no time, no yin or yang. Just a suitcase full of papers and hardworking built-in Mustangs. Wake up, brush teeth, get dressed, put your mask on, open your computers. These are the steps to keep us in stability, but praise instability. These are the steps that allow mobility, but never made it clear to be. These are the steps where society still arrests what gives it anxiety, but what doesn't fill in the cracks of what makes it a society. These are the steps that lack normality and don't have any familiarity. These are the same steps that make you feel like you're on a hamster wheel, but yet that wheel keeps changing and there's no time to breathe. These are the steps of life, no breaks, no time, no yin or yang, just a suitcase full of papers and hardworking built-in Mustangs. Life is full of steps and rhythms that we choose to follow. It feeds us the pills that we are supposed to swallow. It hunches our backs in an arch that makes us hollow. That if we choose to unfollow, all arms are held against us to make us submit and follow. We become so closed off, so invested in society's little game of kickoff, that we forget we are still humans and still have a choice to go against the pressure of what hates us so we can break off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Shanice, for sharing with us. Yeah, again, you've made Miss Perez speechless, and I thank you for that.
No problem.
We want to give Kane another shot to share with us. And Kane, we didn't talk about this, but Kane has a one-man show called Temples of Long and Air. That is a powerful mix of verse and prose and song. And I was blessed enough to get a ticket to some sold out shows when it first launched. But Kane, if you could talk a little bit about your show and how that could have evolved from your work in both spoken word and hip hop.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, hip hop was my first love. And then I was introduced to spoken word poetry. And to me, they've always felt like squares and rectangles. They're similar. They're not identical. A poem is not necessarily a rap, but a rap is a poem. And luckily I had some great mentors when I, made the national team, the Bull City Slam team competing at the National Poetry Slam. We finished third in 2010. We were led by Dasan, Ahanu, who we call the grandfather of poetry in the area, based out of the Hayti Heritage Center off of Fayetteville Street. And, I think Dasan, being an MC and a poet too, was always encouraging us to play with that line and kind of blur that line. I remember when I came in the first year in one of our first trainings, all my work just rhymed the whole time, And Dasan was like, all right, dude. And I was doing rap hands the whole time, And Dasan was like, hold on, and encouraged me and challenged me to work and build out my other elements of writing, from metaphors and similes and again, thinking about narrative. So I think it was a culmination when I wrote the show, when I came out to LA, it was wanting to, just knowing that there wasn't enough that I could say in a 3-minute poem or a 3-minute song, that I wanted to be able to just use all my abilities as a writer and a performer and an oral historian to tell my story. And so it was awesome to be able to just kind of fuse all those different things for the show. And it's been great. Pre-COVID, I got to perform. It got selected to a theater festival called United Solo off Broadway in New York City. And then I got to do a theater residency in Detroit, where I met one of my childhood idols, Jessica Care Moore, from Def Poetry Jam. And We actually just released a song today and a music video. So check out my YouTube channel, shameless plug, Superpowers featuring Jessica Care Moore. That was like a, just a crazy dream come true. So yeah, all that to say, that's what the show was. So yeah, I feel like I should share a little bit. I'll probably share a little excerpt of that, maybe a hip hop verse. And then I know Shanice got some more fire too, because a little birdie told me she got another poem at least. So yeah, so for all the hip hop heads out there, I guess we'll start out with some bars and then maybe go into a little piece of the show. So yeah, I was thinking about being at home and being stuck at the house, and sometimes during coronavirus, you like trying to find ways to be creative, and sometimes things come out just like in the shower, and I was in the shower one day just thinking about how the world done stopped, got us all quarantined, doors closed when the whirlwind stops, hope that we won't be the same. Lord knows if you can't be yourself at home, then where the hell can you? Smile for the camera. Said, if you can't be yourself at home, then where can you? Smile for the camera. Silence is said to be golden, but I defy it. I was chosen. My saliva is molten. I get it cracking like Leviathan tentacles, holding fire in every doses, highest intensity voltage, Zion and Pelican clothing, putting my dukes up. But Carolina blue blood, Southern boy raising my fingers up to the Ku Klux. True love for the region I'm from means that I shun any monument or statue that made a profit from shackles. How I spot you in the present when the violence you're attached to should have died up in the past. Try to hide you like a tattoo we wish we never had. Cheap Confederate brand. Next generation, we should raise instead of a flag, bury the false idols, restore vitals to the divided, build a pedestal for every soul we ever lost sight of, swinging around katana blades, bringing out any sign of hate, chopping them into piranha beta, cooking them on the flame. I said, I'm grubbing on that humble pie, some on that prima donna cake, stuck up in your headspace. I'm going to be McConaughey, my inner state stiller than monasteries and hideaways. I've learned who I am, and I've learned who I ain't. To see, hip hop was always my way of communicating to the world. Everybody got their own superpowers. All you out there listening have your own way of communicating your story to the world. Hip hop just happened to be mine. Now I can remember the first album that I ever got was on cassette tape, which, some of y'all remember that. We had to fast forward through all the whack songs and flip it over to hear the rest of the album. And the first one I ever got was actually Chris Kelly and Chris Smith, better known as Criss Cross. Who are these 13 and 14-year-old rappers from Atlanta, produced by Jermaine Dupri. And their album totally crossed out. They had like their starter jacket backwards and their jeans backwards. I'm pretty sure I was like a young kid in Durham with that for like half a day, until I realized that it was hard to walk and it was probably never going to be a thing, my mother's partner at the time, Burley, who was a kind of a second father figure to me, used to always say, hip hop is nothing new. It's the same thing the Last Poets and the Watts Prophets and Sonia Sanchez and Gil Scott-Heron and Amiri Baraka and Nikki Giovanni did back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And of course he was right. Those are some of the poets that I look up to now. But at the time I was a young knucklehead and I'm like, man, that ain't hip hop, and hip hop in the modern sense as we know it came about in late 70s, early 80s, right? And in the beginning, two of the most important figures were the MC, what we now call a rapper, which stands for Master of Ceremonies, right? And the DJ. Now, at the start, the DJ was actually the star of the show. The Master of Ceremonies was just the hype man or hype woman, being like, DJ Heidi on the ones and twos, with the owner of a white Toyota Corolla, please turn your lights off there. Like that was what rappers did before they were rappers, right? But once MCs started rhyming their speech and they slid in some clever wordplay, that spotlight shifted from the fingers behind the turntables to the mouth behind the microphone. But DJs kept up too, through innovation, with two turntables instead of one. And this thing called a crossfader, they could switch between two records and keep loading in new records so the music never stopped and the people didn't stop dancing. And with good timing, that crossfader can move back and forth between the record on the left and the record on the right, kind of blending them in different ways, like now I've kind of grown up between songs, between left and right, between my mom and Burley and Durham, North Carolina during the year, and my dad brother and grandparents on vacations. They all live together up in West Virginia. Now, my grandma is a beautifully hefty woman. Every recipe gets a stick of butter, and she loves feeding people. Her claim to fame is homemade cookies every year. I remember this one time at Christmas, she made 3,000 cookies. No lie. She'll sit at the dining room table, patient as a watchmaker, learning the secrets of time until 30 metal tins gather like pyramid stone on the kitchen counter, each guarding a different flavor of sweet. Now, grandma's kind of mischievous, actually, though. She's the one always kidding around, throwing in a dirty joke here and there. My grandpa is Catholic, quiet. He's pretty serious. He's a World War II vet, and my dad says it took him decades before he spoke a word about it, even to his own kids. He lost his best friend, Tex, and probably some of his humanity. But to us, he was still just grandpa, with a wisp of a dozen hairs left on the top of his head that I like to style into a point and put the Dairy Queen soft serve twist on the end. He wears Walmart jeans jacked up past the belly button and dons racism like a hand-me-down that was once called fashion. Burley and my mom meet when I'm 4. He's got a master's in African-American history and political science. He'd been an activist in the 70s and 80s and a professor at a college in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Grandma and grandpa call him Barley when I see them. My father chuckles, says, your mother sure does love chocolate. My brother flicks a Confederate flag Zippo lighter he got from a friend at school, and I see the stars and bars light up my neighbor's window on mom's apartment building back home. Burley's face becomes a silent war as he explains the origin of 13 stars on the flag look a lot like 13 Klansmen doing jumping jacks, white freckles on the cheeks of the devil, and he's grinning. White rebel fleet writes quite legibly, black elegy squeezed from the metal. Don't tell me it's the symbol of our pride in the South. Some people try to say it's a symbol of Southern pride, Kane, but the truth is it was created to promote white supremacy by a government that fought to ensure that black people, the blacks don't know how to talk, right, Kane? Most of them are flunkies who don't care for their kids. They're not father. The man who was not my father teaches me to play chess. I teach my homeboy Sergio across the street, and my Sega Genesis collects dust while our queens catfight on the stoop. Grandma says Halle Berry is a pretty black woman. Grandpa asks how Barley's doing, smiling as he says the name. My father says your mother sure does love chocolate. In first grade, Burley and my mom send me careening over pine cones and grass, and my bike becomes my spaceship. My teacher that year is Mrs. McKnight. She's black. We learn basic arithmetic, and in February study Dr. King and Rosa Parks. Grandma says Whoopi Goldberg is uglier than sin. Grandpa tells war stories, claims that black soldiers were scaredy cats. Little old me, I argue with them till my tears chin strap. My dad actually scolds them for being racist, but then he asks how Barley's doing. In third grade, Burley takes me to see Jet Li and Jackie Chan on the big screen at a Kung Fu film festival, and 10,000 imaginary bad guys die of roundhouse kicks in my living room. We learn our times tables that year, read our first novels, write short essays. Grandpa says black folks can't speak proper English. Grandma calls Brazil nuts with the word, calls them toes. Dad says chocolate. Now, fourth grade is North Carolina history. Tar Heels, tobacco auctions, and the Appalachian Mountains. We learned that slavery was here, but it ended. They tell us. Grandpa says Thomas Jefferson treated his slaves like family. The Cardinals, the state bird, the dog with the state treat and flower. Jim Hunt is governor. We learned that segregation was here, but it ended too. No, racism was here, but now black folks can be anything they want. Grandma says they shouldn't be. Married to white folks, though. I asked Burley and my mom, why aren't you married? They tell me a piece of paper doesn't make their love more real. Burley puts me to bed, rubs my back until I fall asleep. In the summer, it's my father that puts me to bed. Rubs my back until I slip into a memory. The first time I hear someone call the N-word is kindergarten. I'm 6. A black neighbor 2 years younger named Isaiah joins us to play when this older white kid named Jonathan calls him the word. His smile opening slow and silent as the flame of a blowtorch in a house of wax. I watch tears melt from Isaiah's 4-year-old eyes. And my cousin, she's the only teenager on the scene. She chases Jonathan until he escapes into a drain pipe like a deleted scene from Stand By Me or Stranger Things. And looking back now, I realized that he was just a parakeet in Jim Crow's living room, repeating what he heard. We're all parakeets of one doctrine or another. I was a songbird caught between anthems, between left and right, or far left and far right, the music in my head getting louder, Burley's voice and my grandparents jumbled like a rookie DJ fumbling with the crossfader. Reagan, Ronald Reagan was a wonderful president. Wonderful Reagan. Ronald was a right-wing demagogue, a fanatic, fanatic president, wonderful fanatic, in the morning. Good morning in the morning. Skip it in the morning. This is National Public Radio. Morning. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show in the morning. Black leaders met today in the morning. Black leaders met in the morning. Let me put it to you this way. The NFL all too often looks like a game between the Bloods and the Crips without any weapons. There, I said it in the morning. Black leaders in the morning. A game between Bloods and Crips without any weapons, the morning. Bloods and Crips without any weapons, the morning. Black leaders, morning. Blood without any weapons, morning. Black morning. Black morning. Black leaders, morning. Black leaders, morning. Black leaders, morning. Blood without any weapons. Are you confused? Yeah, I was too. Thank y'all. So that's just a little excerpt from my one-man show. And, we talk about today, storytelling in poetry. And I think for me, that's a story that took me many, many years to tell. One of the hardest poems that I had to write and work through. And, there's another part that comes next in the show where Burley comes into my class to speak in 4th grade because he had a background in history. So he came into class to speak, and a lot of my friends, white, Black, Asian, were like, "That's your dad, he's Black." And there was so much commotion around it that I got quiet, and I wasn't the quiet kid. We'll just say that. I was like the kid who got in trouble for talking in the back of the class, but I was quiet that day. I barely spoke to Burley. And I remember my mom asking me after school, she was like, "Burley said you were like real quiet in class." And years later, it made me understand that, all the things that I heard from my grandparents, all the things I heard from kids in class, all the things I saw in movies or in TV shows where Full House was the all white family and Family Matters was the all Black family. I was taught, consciously and subconsciously to think that us being different races was different and weird and the exception, so much so that it affected not only how I thought, but it affected how I treated him in that moment. It was like a small betrayal. And I'm just thankful to have this art form to be able to talk through and tell my story and work through my story. And, I'll leave you with a quote that I heard, and then I'll pass it back to Mrs. Perez to bring us back and hear one more poem from Shanice. But I had the chance to tour with the great Patricia Smith, who, again, another person I've idolized, National Book Award finalist, National Poetry Slam winner, HBO Deaf Poet multiple times. And I was in Abu Dhabi. I was invited to perform at the Abu Dhabi Music and Arts Festival, and went there with Patricia Smith and G. Amazawa, my homie from Durham, and touring partner. And I was teaching workshops and performing, but I also got a chance to go to Patricia's workshop. I was like, I'm trying to learn. And I remember there was a young woman who was Emirati, who was from the United Arab Emirates, who was from Abu Dhabi, which is right next to Dubai. And she was in there. And Patricia asked the whole class, "Why do you write?" That was her first question. And this young woman, her response was so simple, but it really resonated with me. I realized I had never thought of it that way. She said, "I write to explain things to myself." And for me, it just like hit home because I love performing for audiences. I love getting energy. That's why this is so different for us. But for me, I got a stack of notebooks that never see the light of day, that are just in the closet, and they're just for me to be able to work through things that I'm holding inside and need to just release and get out and tell myself what they mean and find meaning in them and find how to move forward. So thank you for letting me share a little piece of that with y'all and share some bars and some poems. And I'm really excited. We still got some fire left because I got a little preview. I got to hear the rehearsal. So I'm excited for this next piece. So I'll pass it back to Mrs. Perez to introduce Shanice again.
Thanks for sharing, Kane. I'm gonna point out, it's really interesting because the very first poem that Shanice shared with us dealt with a lot of the same personal processing that she had with her family. And so I'll make sure that we share that recording again so that Kane can get a look at it too, because it blew us all away. It's gonna blow you away too.
Yes.
But I'm gonna share or I'm going to turn it over to Shanice again so that she can share her next work. Shanice?
Branches. They say doing nothing about something that hurts you will continue to hurt you. But they don't know that doing nothing or doing something still hurts you. We used to worry about the guns, but now we worry about who holds them. It's hard to make a world feel something when it's only been numb. You see, the bullets only hurt when the trigger is tempted. That speaking up gets you killed whether you even attempted. Hate will only hurt us and make the mountains we created into avalanches. We stop seeing each other for who we are, and we forgot that we all came from the same branches. Thank you.
Woo. See, if we were in a venue right now, we'd do this thing where it's like you hear a line that's just like, what? We'll be like, rewind. And you would have to do that line again because there's just so many good lines. You know, in poetry, we talk about showing, not telling. That's like one of the kind of tenets of poetry is like, instead of it being a long, you know, paragraph of regular writing, it's like real well-chosen images can tell a whole lot more. And you got so many in there from the mountains to avalanches to the trigger finger is tempted, like just so many awesome one-liners. So glad I got to hear that for a second time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely, definitely. We are going to now hear a work by Dasan Ahanu that he actually wrote at the end of last year in collaboration with Durham Public Schools. To honor the graduates of 2020. And I know Dasan is watching or will watch the recording. And I just want to point out that I call him the Duke of Poetry.
I like that better. I like that better.
I'm not so sure I could call him the grandfather of poetry.
I like the Duke of Poetry. I think he'll like that better anyway.
So we're going to get a chance to hear that work. And here it is. It's called Litany by Dasan Ahanu.
This here be a litany for our tomorrows. Those wonders deserve it of applause for taking these steps towards fulfillment of their purpose. We carry the legacy of yesterday and their parents' hopes and their smiles. You children we call blessing, carrying promises made with hands clasped and head lowered in prayer. You navigated those classrooms, blending daydreams with short attention spans and inspiration. To make memories between the dawn's sun and the night's moon, we reminded you of a future that we called yours for the taking. Taught you the value of critical thinking, showed you that what you could achieve is all yours. And we let you know that this is only the beginning. This here be a litany for our tomorrows. Where we celebrate your victory, call this chapter done. Hope that we have equipped you well enough that the next won't be snatched by blind justice, ignorance, or mishap. Hope that you won't become martyrs before you can finish being miracles. But we won't let the dreams we hold become nightmares. We prefer optimism over fear. We will watch with great enthusiasm as you move forward with your lives. There might be those foolish enough to refuse to see the value in all of you, the brilliance and fire and innocence in all of you, but this here litany is a call to never let the outside world make you doubt the resolve that rests in all of you. You will be the doctors who will find the cure, the lawyer who will challenge the statute, the chef who will get rave reviews for the genius in the menu, the writer whose bestseller becomes the text we fall in love with and talk about. You will be the actors receiving standing ovation on opening night, the teachers who inspired the next to know that they can become now, the mechanic, the store owner, the designer, athlete, entertainer, politician, activist, or organizer, everything magnificent about the future we are waiting for you to claim. This litany is for your parents, For years, you have been the lighthouse eyes that guided them to work and back every day to provide you a better way. You have been the hugs that feel like the wings of guardian angels, the kisses that become timely affirmation, well placed and well received. They show up to love you, raise you, discipline you, listen to you, encourage you, support you, knowing that you were intended to survive. This litany is for your teachers who know that you are whatever the heavens destined you to be. You are the breakthrough waiting to happen, the curious waiting to know, the wild and rambunctious waiting to be calmed, the stars waiting to shine, the diamond in the rough waiting to be found amidst the cold. You are everything they know you are and nothing the narrow-minded would try to make you seem. That is why they show up to fight for you, teach you, mentor you, knowing that you were intended to thrive. This litany is a reverie, a declaration of recognition for your will and determination. You earned this moment. It is a marker of what you can do and foreshadowing of what you are about to accomplish. We are so elated to share it with you. Ours is a bright beaming, nothing can hold back, tears of joy falling like a long-awaited spring rain, an exhale strong enough to cause leaves to fall in autumn. So proud of all that you are, so excited for what you will continue to become. This here litany be the telling of a truth, that truth being that you are not only the engine of our tomorrows, you are the joy in our now.
That's my coach.
Yes, it is. I think it's ever appropriate for this year too. This year has been, this academic year has been just as upside down, sideways, right side up again as the 2020 graduates experienced. And so I want to thank you, Kane and Shanice, for sharing your words with us today and sharing a little or big pieces of us, of yourselves with us today. And Shanice, I'm running out of books, and I just want to be able to thank you for sharing with us every week. So you, one of the things that I do with my spare time, I'm a crafter and I make t-shirts. And so I'm going to make you a Bull City Poet t-shirt. And I'll get that to your house.
Thank you so much. It's honestly been a pleasure being here. So it's definitely helped me bring out my voice and use it. So thank you.
That voice was there. We just needed you to use it for us. That's all. So I want to thank everyone again, and thank everyone that's watching on YouTube or Facebook or gets a chance to watch the recording. Don't forget also to visit Kane Smego's YouTube channel. You can check out a lot of his work there, both his hip hop work and his spoken word as well. And we are signing off on our last open mic for Poetry Month. Thank you, everyone.
Peace. Thanks for tuning in.